Yo, what up, what up, what up? Welcome to a brand new episode of Rugby Swag, yo. We got a great show for you today. It is going to be a busy one. We got special guests, Stephen Lewis and Jason Bray. We're going to be talking Super Rugby, going to be talking National Rugby League, and we're going to be talking Africa games that are happening this week. On top of that, y'all, we're going to take a quick look into some of the games. Six Nations, Major League Rugby. Y'all, we got an amazing show coming up for you today. Let's get to this intro so we can get it all kicked off. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. You are now tuned in to the greatest of all time, the greatest of all time.
Welcome to the Rugby Swag Show.
Yo, welcome. Like I said again, my name is Gift Time and Bailu, and of course, this is Rugby Swag, the show where we get to talk to people about the opportunities they have found, created, and taken advantage of via rugby, as well as keeping you up to date with the things that are happening in our lovely sport so we can continue to develop and grow our lovely sport the way that it should be. Amen. Hallelujah. Let's go. Y'all, we got a great one for you today. Like I said before we get started, please, I need you guys to go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button on the YouTube channel, obviously. You know, we need to be able to get those so the algorithm is willing to take this, push this, and make sure the information is getting to the people that deserve and need to have that information in front of them. On top of that, y'all, I need you guys to absolutely tell this to your friends and family. And if you need ways for them, because maybe they're not YouTube people, maybe they aren't ones that are typically trying to watch, well, that is okay. Because number one, we got social media. Of course, you guys can absolutely catch us on social media at Rugby Swag Show on Instagram, at Gift a Bailu, GIFTEGBELU on X, Twitter, if you may, and then of course on any other platform. On Facebook, it's at Gift Time Rugby. At TikTok, it's at Gift Time Rugby for as long as TikTok is in existence as of now. On Twitch, it's at Gift Time Rugby, and of course, on YouTube at Gift Time Rugby. On top of that, again, you guys might not be social media people. Your friends might not be social media people. I want you to know that we still got other options where they can absolutely check out the podcast in audio version. Check it out on Spotify. You can check it out on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, basically any major streaming audio platform, we will be there. And we want to make sure that you have as much reach, as much capability, as much opportunity as feasibly possible, because again, I think it's really important to make sure that we know that this news is absolutely some of the top news that we can be having, and we want to make sure that we are getting that out the way that it needs to be. So y'all, I don't want to hold off much longer because we got a lot of show to do for today. But before we go into it, let's take care of the people who take care of us. I want to talk about our sponsor, Health Enhanced Foods, the #1 specialty food mix, flour mix in the world. Y'all, I know you guys are thinking, man, I don't do anything with flour. I'm not a baker. I'm not a cook. Well, I'm here to tell you that you don't need to be. We just need the ease. And we want to make sure that you are able to get the breads, breakfast-wise, or regular day lunch or dinner that you are supposed to be able to eat without worrying about any issues in retaliation, whether it's stomach issues, whether it is potential with heart, whether you have allergies. We have the baking mix that you need to be able to have the breads that you want. So, y'all, we're going to be right back after this commercial break. Let's get it kicked off. Let's look into Six Nations. Let's go, y'all. I'm going to let you get back to the show in a moment, but I want to talk to you about our sponsors, Health Enhanced Foods, the best specialty flours in the business. What does that mean for you? That is the flours that allow you to be able to get the nutritious need from your bread make. That's muffins, bread, croissants, whatever, pancakes and muffins. It will give you the opportunity to be able to get the best while still being able to eat like you wanted to. We have various amounts of products available for those who have special dietary needs to those who are looking for a special health outcome. And of course, because they're part of the Rugby Swag Show, we want to let you know that you got a chance to go to healthenhancedfoods.com and use code Rugby Swag to be able to get 20% off your first order. Y'all, this is something that you're going to need. You got to build up, have your energy at the best, be the maximum. It's 2024. Let's do the best. But now I want you guys to get into it. Let's get back to the show. Yo, let's get back into it right away. We got Six Nations, and bro, what a weekend of Six Nations that we had this one. This was upset weekend, y'all. Upset weekend. All the big ones went down. Look, let's just go right into it right away, man. Starting right off, we had Italy taking on Scotland. Scotland on the road, but man, Scotland was heavily the favorite through this. Italy, man, they said we are tired of you guys talking so much smack about us. So what if we'd only won 14 games over like 20 years? We are tired of the BS, and they said we're not here to play. Recess is over. We're about to school you. And they came back strong after a tie against France the week before. Came back, didn't get let down, hit it with Scotland, 31-29 win over Scotland. One of the biggest victories that Italy has had. I've always said to people, I don't believe that Italy is the worst team in rugby. I think they are the worst D1 team, the worst tier 1 team. And today they decided that with their young guys, they were not going to keep continuing on in this same manner. And look, they took it to the large ones. I think that now this is a team that's dangerous because they've tasted blood. They're like the sharks that are sitting in the water, and the chum's starting to go around inside there, and the blood's starting to go, and now they're starting to circulate because they've tasted it. Oh, they've tasted it so good, and it's so precious, y'all. Yo. I'm so extra, dude. I'm so bloody extra. Oh, man. They're sitting in the chum, trying to get ready. Next up, we also had Wales versus France. Even though, this one ended up the way it expected. Wales had a nice start to begin with, but needless to say, obviously, it was going to flop out. And France ended up taking the win in the second half, 45-24. Hang on, tell you a second.
Yo, and of course, we had probably the biggest, not the biggest upset, but the biggest game, which was England taking on Ireland. Oh, man, this was one hell of a game that went down. England ended up winning this one 23-22. Man, this was the first time I think England has ever played like a Southern team. Like, they came out so strong. They came out so powerful. Like, they smacked Ireland in the mouth. Like, this was not a game that they were sitting back and afraid of Ireland scoring. No, they said, we're going to throw our bodies. I've told people this. I don't think I've ever seen Maro Itoje throw his body like that. Man, I'm looking at like Ollie Lawrence, the number 12, just smashing through that Irish line. Like, Ireland was on their heels the entire game. I know the score is close, but the gameplay was not as close as the score was. Honestly, if it wasn't for missed kicks probably by George Ford, it probably would have been a much closer game than it would have been a much further game than the score let on. But of course, that's just part of it, not to take away. Obviously, it was a tough game for him. Shout out to Marcus Smith, who was able to get that last penalty kick to take it over the top, as opposed to, as I think on X, Joe Marler said, yo, if you would have just given it to me, I would have smashed it in. Probably wouldn't have. You probably would wasted time and caused a turnover. But Marcus Smith, quick play between scrum half and Marcus getting in for the penalty kick, killing the game. Man, that was a great game to watch. It took me like 6 hours to watch it because I had so much to do on Sunday. But it was a great, bloody game to be able to watch. I gotta say, man, this was a good week. This is the weekend where you go, oh, this is why you watch Six Nations, because anybody can get it at any point in time, and that's the way it should be. And of course, it ended the Grand Slam. Ain't no back-to-back Grand Slams. Ain't no history making. If you guys saw the rugby odds on the Rugby Wrap-Up channel with Matt McCarthy, John Bradford Layfield, and and George Hook, I'd said it at the way beginning. I was like, this year, especially after watching Six Nations Full Contact, I was like, there's not going to be a Grand Slam this year. There's not going to be any Grand Slam. Between watching Full Contact and what Ireland and France had done at the end of the Rugby World Cup, it was too much pressure. It was too much pressure. You had so much hope, and that died. Like you knew that you were still an inferior team. You can win a Grand Slam whenever you think that you're number one and you're the best. You know, you can do it then, but you can't do it whenever there is a seed of doubt. And they had the seed of doubt after the Rugby World Cup, and obviously we know how that all ended out. So this was a great one, man. I want to know what you guys' thoughts are on this. Absolutely comment. Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you guys are thinking. This one was one of those situations where I absolutely was just enthralled with the weekend. Absolutely enthralled. All right, let's look forward to what we're going to be having coming up this upcoming weekend, of course. All right, we got, of course, the 3 games. We're coming up on the last weekends of the rugby of the Rugby Six Nations. What am I doing? What's going on here? I don't know why my voice is going out like that. It's coming on the second to last week of Six Nations. No. We are on the last week. I am tripping. We are absolutely on the last week. So this is where it all comes down to, all right? So first game's up. We got Wales taking on Italy. This is the battle of what would have been the battle of the losers. But France is the one that's at the bottom right now. Like, that's the wildest part. Italy is sitting in fourth place. In fourth place. Wild. But a lot of people go, man, Wales played a tough game at the beginning of the Wales versus France game. They have a chance. They got a chance. Like, they've tasted blood. But I don't think this is last year. I think last year, Wales had the chance, and they took it, and they got it. This Italy team is out for vengeance. There was a new coaching staff, leadership improved, pack improved. The back line is top notch as it could go. They're seeing the results of their really great U20 squad now starting to turn over there. And I think this is going to be one where Italy absolutely demolishes Wales in the last game. Really out of the disrespect of last year of losing and ended up getting the wooden spoon in that result, man. I don't know what the score is going to be, but I do feel like Italy is going to put all their foot down on the pedal and gas the heck out of this Wales-Italy team, especially in the second half. Because this Wales team is young. They got a lot of controversy. There's a lot of pressure. It's going to be at home. I don't think it's going to matter. Italy for the win on this one against Wales. The next game is France versus England. Now, this is a game, again, 2 teams that ended up winning. You saw France kind of maybe possibly find a scrum half in their I think their rookie in their rookie that might be able to replace Antoine Dupont for his positioning since he's gone off the sevens. And they saw a comeback in the second half where, like I said before, ended up winning 45-26, 24. And this is one of those games where they can make a marker on their rival. On the other half of it, you got England. England has been mid for almost the majority of this tournament. I mean, they played Wales close, disrespectfully. They played Italy close, which now doesn't seem as bad, seeing what Italy has been able to do. And then they obviously lost the Calcutta Cut to Scotland. But again, you get a team that just took it on and just bum rushed Ireland. I mean, they stomped Ireland. Like, they came in from all sides, mollywopping. Again, don't let the score fool you. England bullied Ireland. England absolutely bullied Ireland the entire game. But this is where I think this is going to end up being the kicker. While this France-England game is a rivalry game, I do feel like England used all their energy on Ireland. Like, if Ireland had been the last game of the year, this would have been better. But against a French team that is still weak, and I still think this England team is actually not more talented, but probably more in sync because they know their pieces. This French team is still dangerous, and they got a little bit of a confidence booster, of course, against a bad team, so it can make them look worse. And the fact that they played them close in the second half says something. But, you know, I do think that this French team is going to actually keep this game close. I Wouldn't put it past France to win this game in a nail biter, because I just don't know if England's going to have anything left after Ireland, because this is definitely that game that you toss to the side, especially because of where they're ranked. But I do think England's going to end up winning this. I ultimately think England will win this. They're going to come out of this, but this is going to be another squeaker. This is going to be an absolute squeaker. And it's going to really, and I think England knows that there is a possibility, the slightest of slight chances that they could still win the Six Nations, because it all depends on what this next game is, which is Ireland versus Scotland. And this Ireland versus Scotland game is going to be everything. Scotland absolutely ish the bed against Italy in the last seconds, even though, once again, Italy came out to play. They said, once again, recess is over. It's time to take you to class, bro. But I do think Ireland is going to be pissed. They did not expect to lose, and especially did not expect to get bullied. And the tape will show that they got bullied. Scotland has, I think, a mental break. Like, for whatever reason, they just can't get over the top. And I think this Ireland team is going to intimidate them. Look at Ireland to win this one, win the Six Nations. No Grand Slam back-to-backs, but they're going to end up winning the Six Nations, because Scotland, even though Finn Russell's going to play lights out, is going to find a way to let their consistent losing against Ireland as of recently play into their heads. And I think ultimately that's going to be the biggest folly of it all. So let me know what you guys think about this. Let me know where you guys stand. You know, obviously, you know, I got an opinion. I've been wrong before, you know, so who knows? But I want to know where you guys thought. You can hit me up in the comments on now, or obviously later on, either in the comments, or you can message me on whatever social media that you guys choose to use. You know. All right, let's go on to MLR. Again, another weekend where we had a lot of upsets, a lot of setup for this one. And I think this was actually a really great second weekend of rugby for the MLR, because my goodness, like what can we expect more when we are still early on, but it's anybody's game. So let's take a look at this right off the bat. We had first game was Old Glory taking on the New England Free Jacks. That looked like that should have been an absolute upset of a game. It should have been an absolute upset of a game for Old Glory. But man, whenever you're talking about the battle of the colors, the battle of the blues and reds, the battle of patriotism, man, DC took out Boston like it was took out Boston. And that was a great game by DC, jumping off of a loss from New Orleans just a week ago, which is a rivalry game, to take on New England, who is obviously the reigning champions. But in addition to that, they are also, you know, really favorites to be able to win this all again. They're a powerful team. They've brought back a lot of their players. They seem to have loaded up, but man, Old Glory came and they did it on the. They did it at home. That is impressive. Protecting this house. I'm sorry, they did it on the road. Protecting this house. That's the way it's supposed to get done. That's the way you're supposed to get it done, man. Shout out to Old Glory, Paul Sheehy and them for that one. Next, we had Nola Gold taking on the Anthem. Again, Nola Gold, you know, a slow start, but we're able to get it. This is the first time in 2 years since basically Nate Osborne got fired that New Orleans has been able to start off a season 2-0. After prior being really perennial playoff contenders, the last 2 years have been very, very poor. But man, shout out to them for taking them on. I know the Anthem is not a good team. They're a young team. There's literally just like college players and, you know, basically just out of college players that are taking on the pros that have been established, as well as the foreign guys. But, you know, I'm shouting out for gold. All right, that's how you're supposed to get it done. That's what you do. You take out a team you're supposed to win. 34-19, Nola Gold. Utah Warriors versus Chicago Hounds. Much closer game than the score looks. Man, Utah Warriors ended up taking this one 29-15. Chicago Hounds just They're just not getting that leverage. Obviously, they got the win last week against Miami, but weren't able to take it up. Look, traveling to Miami and then going up into the mountains to Utah, that's tough, man. That's tough. Tough back-to-backs on that one to be able to go. And then next up, we got Seattle Seawolves versus the Miami Sharks. Game was 29-18. Miami Sharks really could have won this one because Seattle was really shooting themselves in the foot this entire game. But again, the new teams, the expansion teams, just they be expanding, man. They expanded. Like, it's hard to be an expansion team out in these pieces, man. So, again, they do their best. Obviously, you're going up to Seattle. That is a long travel. You're literally going back in time by 3 hours. Like, this is a tough one to be able to do. But again, you got to give a team where, like the Seattle Seawolves, again, they came off of a very, very sloppy game from just a week ago against the San Diego Legion. Of course, getting a win, but man, sloppy game again. But Starfire Stadium, the Black Hole, seems to be able to keep them up, and they got another win, 29-18. Dallas Jackals were not able to follow up their win from last week against LA, against the San Diego Legion, staying in California. Legion would end up taking this one 30-23. And then finally, Houston SaberCats were up in LA. And again, I think the Houston SaberCats probably are the dark horse to win the West. They ended up beating LA 27-12. Again, it's a tough game. Again, none of the expansion teams should be expected to win anything of significance for this year. Just it's tough. You need the synchronization. Even if they came off from other teams, like you need the synchronization. It's just so much. All right, so let's look into the games that are going to be going on for this week. First off, we got New England versus NOLA Gold in New England. I think NOLA Gold is going to be able to keep this level up, even though I do feel like New England is going to be angry. And I'm not going to use the power of transientness, since obviously, like, whenever you use power of transient, it means like since Gold beat DC and DC beat New England, hence New Orleans Gold should be able to beat New England. That's not how it works. I actually think that this New Orleans Gold team is actually coming out with a new zeal. They've gotten a good refreshing of players. Obviously lost some, but I think their coaching, I think they got some they rehabilitated themselves this year. It's going to be a very, very tough game in New England. It's going to be very, very tough. But I think that getting out of the smoggy heat that's popping up in New Orleans and going into the coolness in New England is going to play a lot. There's not an altitude thing. Players are on point. Man, look for New Orleans to be able to beat New England. Next, we got Old Glory DC versus Chicago Hounds. Old Glory is at home for the first time in 2 weeks. Old Glory is about to whack Chicago Hounds. They're about to wax them. They're going to open up their stadium, the new stadium at the Maryland Soccerplex. And they're going to absolutely not murder. I don't think it's murder, but they're going to beat old Chicago Hounds. Next, you got Houston SaberCats taking on the Miami Sharks. Again, another situation where Miami Sharks just aren't getting any favors. Going on the road now for the second week in a row. Houston SaberCats, like I said, I think are the dark horse to win the West. I think Houston is going to absolutely have a smashing time in their own stadium again. And they're going to end up beating Miami Sharks. Miami, even though it's the Argentina, third side, again, synchronization and trying to get their legs underneath them. There's a lot of parts to this, but I think Houston SaberCats end up winning this one. Utah Warriors take on the Seawolves. Man, I look at the Seawolves. Yes, they're 2-0 so far, but I think they've had the sloppiest 2-0 starting off the season. I think this is where the dam finally breaks for them. Utah at home, again, that altitude is huge. Even though Seattle has its own altitude is huge. Utah's hungry, and they want to be able to get another win, go back-to-back. I look at Utah to be able to get this one over Seattle with not ease. This is going to be a very close game. It's going to be a very sloppy game, but I don't think Seattle is going to have the chance to shoot itself in the foot and still get the win nonetheless. Like, I just don't see it happening again for a third time in a row. Good team. It's a good team, but I think they're going to get the leverage by week 6, and then you're going to see them kind of just soar through the West, and it's going to come down to Seawolves versus Houston. I really do believe it. San Diego Legion takes on Los Angeles. San Diego is going to beat Los Angeles. San Diego is going to beat Los Angeles. It's at home for San Diego. Los Angeles is still a team that's on the rise. There's expansion team. It's going to take them a while. It reminds me literally of whenever the Giltinis were getting their hands, like super talented, bunch of experience, but you got to get your legs underneath you. It takes you at least 25% of the season to be able to get that, and then there we go. We can go from there. And then lastly, the Carolina Anthem take on the Dallas Jackals. Anthem are at home again. Again, this is a young team. The Dallas Jackals were the expansion team just this last year. I think Big Brother is going to try and take over, going to try and show out against Little Brother. Anthem just don't have the size, don't have the speed. They're a late in the season, look for them to do something next season team. They are not about playing or winning this year. They're about getting their legs underneath them, and that's where it goes with that marker. So, let me know what you guys think about this, Where are you guys feeling with it? What do you guys think about what's going into this next season of MLR, not season, this next week of MLR? Let me know what your predictions are, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. All right, y'all, we're going to go to a commercial break real quick. We're going to be right back. We got special guest Jason Bray of Rugby Lovers Guide to Asia. You guys have probably seen him whenever we do Singapore to Tokyo. We're going to be talking Super Rugby. We're going to be talking National Rugby League, and we're going to go into depth with it, y'all. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey everybody, this is just the Bray train sending out a personal little video diary to all you people out there, where I am going to document me riding most of the way between Singapore and Tokyo for the 2019 Rugby World Cup.
I needed help, and it came from Louisiana.
We in Singapore, baby!
Gift from Gift Time Rugby USA is a extroverted tour de force. But what unites us is a hunger for adventure.
Off to KL, Kuala Lumpur. Yeah! Woo!
Gift, where are we?
We're in
Morning, Vietnam! Mount Fuji, baby!
Our love of Asian rugby culture.
1, 2, 3, center!
Rugby is starting to develop here in Cambodia for women as well.
Valkyries, the mighty, mighty Valkyries!
We're out here, we're running out of energy, we're running out of money, and we're feeling isolated. And yet at that critical moment, friends, family, sometimes complete strangers come on board. Before you know it, we're back in the game.
Tokyo, here we come!
Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. Watch the full adventure at crugby.vhx.tv. That's C like SEE rugby.vhx.tv. Welcome back, y'all. Look, we got another look into Super Rugby Pacific and the National Rugby League. Of course, these two professional leagues are absolutely killing it like none other before. But, I always say, look, if you don't know the information, you need to find somebody that knows the information. Because of the fact that there's so much rugby happening and it's so difficult to keep up, I had to bring in a little bit of help. And so I got my guy, Jason Bray of the Rugby Lovers Guide to Asia, to be able to come in and to be able to help me with being able to talk a little bit Super Rugby and NLR. Y'all, please give your round of applause for my guy, Jason. Expert guy who is obviously obsessed. Obviously, we put all the hype and pressure. All right, y'all. I am here with an expert guy who is obviously obsessed. Obviously, we put all the hype and pressure on him about Super Rugby Pacifica and National Rugby League because, I am actively trying to make sure that I give more credence to Rugby League and see how I can unwind my biases against Rugby League as they continue to develop and try and make its efforts in whatever means or factor. I want to bring in, of course, the guy, the legend, my partner, my boy, Jason Bray of Rugby Lover's Guide to Asia. Do I get that, say that? Or do we just go like Jason Bray, filmer, photographer, documentarian?
We've known each other for about 5 or 6 years. You still can't remember the name of my business. The Rugby Lover's Guide to Asia is it?
I said that. Rugby Lover's Guide. I just didn't know whether you want to keep wanting to use it or whether you want to
you fumbled your way. You fumbled your way through that as if you didn't know. But I forgive you. I'll forgive you.
Look. All right. We today get to just, we're not going to go Asia. We're going Asia adjacent. But you know what?
Yeah.
Today, we are talking Super Rugby Pacifica and National Rugby League. Obviously, these are two areas that I enjoy, but I simply do not have as much time to be able to focus in on them. So I needed to bring the help, and obviously, you know this. So are you ready, man? Are you ready to bring your deep Aussie insight?
Correct. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I mean, I again, like you, I'm pretty busy too, but I've got a basic overall understanding of what's happening. So we'll rip into it.
Look, this is your region, all right? You are an expert. You know everything, and you have no choice. There's no choices.
Expert. Oh my gosh. All right, let's start first. Super Rugby.
Right. Let's start. All right, let's recap on Super Rugby week 3. Obviously, they've been in this for a little bit. I think the biggest games that happened out of Super Rugby this past week, number 1, Chiefs losing to the Reds. That is your guys' people out there. That was a big one because the Chiefs really had a big game coming off of that one. The other one that was super surprising to me, Crusaders losing to Fijian Drua. Massive. Massive, in that. And then lastly, maybe and to some extent, what we got from the Hurricanes Blues, Hurricanes winning 29-21 in a close one. For you, what were some of the games that caught your eye from last week with Super Rugby?
Just going through them, the ones that caught my eye. Unfortunately, the Moana Rebels game caught my eye for the wrong reason. Empty stadium, ugly to look at. Like, we're not talking people scattered. We're talking about dead, empty stadium. Not a good look for the Super Rugby. So that was for the wrong reason. But afterwards, the Waratahs missed a kick at the end to beat Highlanders. A reasonably easy kick by Super Rugby standards, by professional rugby standards. Could have won the game. Another big upset for an Australian team over a Kiwi team, but it wasn't to happen. The Drua win is big, particularly since this is now 3 losses in a row to Crusaders, who've been winning this competition since Adam was a boy.
Right.
And to see them lose, 3 in a row is like huge. Drua did it last year as well in Suva in Fiji, so that's kind of puts a little bit of a temper on how big that upset was. So this is the 2nd year in a row they've done it. But it is great to, unlike the Moana game, and I'm not knocking Moana, it's not Moana's fault. They're playing in New Zealand, that one. But it was just great to see a packed house of Fijians bouncing off the walls in that game. The Pacific Island teams is what makes this competition distinct. Those 2 teams, Fiji, for me anyway, I think it's the kind of the point of difference between it, the NRL, and other rugby competitions. So to see Drua doing well in Fiji in a packed house was great. Crusaders, I guess there's, when you have a team that does really well, like it's killing it, and they've won like I think the last God knows how many, and to see them kind of bring them back a little bit for most teams to go kind of have a bit of a giggle. Crusaders also obviously it's heartbreaking, but it's nice to see other teams getting the look in. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It gives kind of parity some parity into the week. Watching this Fijian Drua team, obviously this is what year 2 of them, year 3 of the Fijian Drua. I've been really impressed with the games that feel the biggest. They seem to come up to play, but the games that seem to be where they should win or should at least dominate in, it seems to be the ones where they struggle the most. From your perspective, from what you've been able to see, what do you think is kind of the pattern habit that you expect or that you've observed from the Fijian Drua over the last year or 2, and subsequently what you might be seeing now coming recently?
Well, I think you nailed it. For particularly for new teams in any competition, it's just consistency, winning week in, week out. So Moana won last week. They beat Fiji in a really wonderful game, like an absolute try feast, which what I was hoping for and what we saw. The week after, they lost the Rebels. I won't say one of the weaker teams, but certainly not one of the front runners at this stage of the season, and they probably should have beat them. So it's just whenever a new team comes into a competition, no matter what team that is and what kind of game they're playing, consistency is what it's all about. That week in and week out grind, that discipline, that turning up a weekend. And that's just simply what both those teams need to do. That just get into that to win ugly sometimes when your team's going about 90% and they're playing against a spirited opposition, but still find an ugly way to win. Things like that. That's just what they need to do. And that only comes through experience, through playing lots and lots and going a group of players who are just in the habit of winning, which is why teams like Crusaders have always continued to do well, because they're in that winning habit.
Yeah,
that's what they've got to do. They've got to get that winning habit.
Man, okay.
Speaking of winning habits, Brumbies came back as well.
At least one of the Australian teams did absolutely disappoint. Well, I guess the Reds won too. So at least 2 out of 3 of the Australian teams did absolutely disappoint.
Yeah. Well, that is a good thing for this competition. Obviously, it's great for us Aussies to see our teams do well because it bodes well for international stuff. But the competition as a whole benefits just so we're not sitting there watching, 5, 6 Kiwi teams in the finals with the whatever Australian team can sneak in, disappearing out the back door in the first week. To see a team a competition that mix it up and engages with the Australian rugby public as well, deep into the finals. I think that's what they want to see. So my boys, the Reds, beat the Chiefs, who are on top at the stage. And not only, I'm a Reds fan, so I'm going to go on a little bit here, but not only did they win, but they're playing a really good brand of rugby. They've brought in a guy called Les Kiss, who's the coach. He's actually a rugby league player, played for the North Sydney Bears, as well as for the Mighty Maroons and stuff. And he was coaching up at London Irish. And I don't know if you ever saw any of that stuff before the London Irish got kicked out, as most teams do these days, it seems, in that competition. But they were playing a great brand of rugby there. I loved watching the London Irish play, and now they're playing a great brand of rugby here with the Reds, which I think is our natural. Like the Reds, again, I'm a Reds fan from day dot. So I've always thought that we are better when we're playing that open brand of rugby, that exciting brand of rugby, and we are playing it and we're winning. So again, that bodes well for the competition, that we've got a mixture of teams competing. It's not a give me that the Crusaders are going to win their 20th in a row.
Right.
I'm certainly a lot more interested than I have been for several seasons at this point, round 3. Right.
Awesome.
And then we get back to that winning thing, is that what could easily happen is the Kiwis teams, because they are more professional. They are far more professional than the Australian teams at this point. Let's be honest. They do have the winning feeling in their blood, and they're more likely. It wouldn't surprise me if they pull away towards the end of the season. But at this stage, it's an engaging competition.
The parity is still early, and at least you're able to see it. And let's kind of run with that, and let's kind of get on to the next point of week 4 and the games that are coming, because I think this speaks now a lot of volumes for what you're talking about now. So we got obviously full slate of games, 6 games. So just count them off. We got Crusaders, Hurricanes, the Western Force versus Moana Pacifica, Chiefs versus Fijian Drua, Waratahs versus Blues, Highlanders versus Brumbies, and Rebels versus Reds. Once again, a solid slate of New Zealand versus Australia, and then the islands taking on the worst and best of what they have to offer.
Yeah. So do you want to briefly? I'll just briefly go through.
Yeah.
I would even. This sounds totally against the form guide. One versus last, or one of the last teams. But Crusaders I think this is their first game at home. They've been a lot of traveling. They could easily fire up and beat the Canes, even though the Canes are on top. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. The Reds will thrash them by 100 points.
Rebels have no chance. No chance whatsoever.
No, they're doing all right. They're all right. Callagher, the blood nut on the wing is just playing great rugby. He's a startup for the Wallabies at this point. It's great to see him playing well. Moana could beat the Force, but I think the Force all the way over there in WA should have him. But go Moana. We would like to see you get up a win. Highlanders versus Brumbies. Brumbies are running hot and cold. That's not usually their style. They're usually the Mr. Consistency of Australian rugby, but Highlanders might have them. Chiefs will beat Drua, I think. The Waratahs versus the Blues with probably the Blues.
Blues. So, okay. So let's kind of rolling back a little bit. Again, it goes back to what I was saying, looking at Fijian Drua versus Chiefs. Obviously, Chiefs are coming off of a loss. Drua coming off of a big win. Do you feel, even though that the Chiefs are obviously the favorites and once again are top of the stand, do you feel like for Fiji, though, again, we've said they seem to step up when it matters most. What makes this game maybe more difficult than, or maybe more possible for them, despite the fact that the Chiefs are at home, but they are coming off a loss?
I guess they've had a taste of victory. Their confidence will be up. They don't fear the New Zealand sides. They feel they can get them. And they will probably have, even in Hamilton, I would imagine they'd have a pretty excited fan base, probably come down from Auckland to support them there. They're well-loved side, I think, by everyone. No one would hate them.
Right.
It's just, I just can't see the Chiefs losing this one. I'm trying to see Drua win, but I just think the Chiefs firing up after a tough loss to the Reds at home in front of their crowd. Fiji maybe doing the opposite, a bit of a hangover from last week. I just, again, I want Drua Moana to win as much as possible because I do believe that they're the point of difference between them and just about every rugby competition in the world. But it's hard to see the Chiefs losing this one. But, this is proving to be a good competition with upsets along the way. You just don't know whoever turns up on the day, I hope wins the game.
Man, look, again, it is anybody's game. Obviously, the stands are going to be jumping back and forth for a little bit on that one. So I feel you on that one. Now, so in another show, I talked about Moana Pacifica and the Force. The only reason why I've become particularly interested in Moana Pacifica is because there's been proverbial rumors that they might move them out of Tonga and move them to Hawaii. A lot being, I guess, the possibility of one of the former All Blacks, trying to move this team over there. But they've also been very uninspiring in terms of their performances. Like, yes, they get a good win off of the Fijian Drua, but then, they just go a stretch where it's like they don't do anything. And so I'm looking at the Western Force, who are bottom of the bunch right now, have seem to have a history of just being losers. So, with that performance, with that competition, what is it about the Moana Pacifica that can provide some hope? Because obviously this is going to be on the road for them, obviously, and again, Western Force is in Australia, so they're on the road. What about Moana Pacifica? Is it possible? What do they need to do to be able to win this one? And then, if on the other side, what does the Western Force need to do to maybe prevent themselves from being last place again?
Yeah, I must admit, I don't know much about behind the scenes in Moana Pacifica. Of all the teams in the competition, the ones I probably know the least about, although I will do my research before we meet again to find out more. But I would say, with, again, a little bit like the Drua, a team or a club that is just new to any competition is discovering its culture.
Yeah,
is discovering what makes it work and discovering what kind of gives them their mojo and how they want to play as a team. And it does feel like Moana is a little bit slower to the uptake on that than Fiji and Drua. I can't tell you why. Maybe get someone from that who knows more about what's going on there than me. They just seem a little bit to struggle on the uptake. The Force, they were up by a heap of points against the Rebels 2 weeks ago. I think they're up by 18, 20 points with 15 minutes to go and lost that game in Melbourne. I turned the TV off, or I changed over, I had to go to bed, or something happened because I thought that game was done. And I couldn't believe I came back and see the Rebels ran them down all those points. I think it was something like 24 unbeaten, 24 points. And that kind of says that they're having a hard time finishing games off. They're having a hard time putting opposition to the swords. And again, if winning is a habit, as it is for the Crusaders, then losing is a habit as well. And it looks like Flourish are in a bit of an ugly losing habit. There's a lot of work that goes into the Force. They've got a really strong base over there in Perth. They've got, Forrester and co backing them to the hilt. They've got a ton of South African fans. A lot of South Africans in Australia moved to Perth. And a lot of the Kiwi expats also make up a really strong base with the Force. There were times I've seen the Force play, and I think they look really good, and they look exciting. They look like they're getting their act together, and then they lose. And they just have to play the 80 minutes. It's a cliche, but in their case, it seems to be the case. They just have to get in there. They've obviously got plenty of attacking ability, but they just need to play that 80 minutes and get back into the winning habit. Moana might be their chance to do it. I will say that the game will be exciting. I think it'll be a pretty high-scoring game.
Yeah.
And I encourage anyone to tune in. But I still think the Force in front of their home crowd will have that one. They've just got to play the 80 minutes.
I love it, man. All right. I think that's all we'll do for Super Rugby Pacific. Obviously, you already kind of did the rundown on who you thought is going to be the win, so I don't think we need to go into that more. All right. So we'll be right back, and we're going to go into National Rugby League Week 2. I know you're hurting on this one because your Broncos, flopped in Vegas.
Oh, bloody hell.
All right, we'll be right back.
Hey everybody, my name is Gift Tommy Baylor with Health Enhanced Foods. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we have going on over here, and I want to talk to you specifically about one of my favorite products, buckwheat baking mix. Now, why is buckwheat baking mix important to you? I always like to say, the one thing that you want to be able to do whenever you're eating your food is to not have to worry about whether it's going to be healthy or whether it's going to be good for your body. When it comes with buckwheat, this is one of those few seeds that have a plethora of layers when it comes to what your health is. And within the buckwheat baking mix, it is great for those who want to be able to use it for pancakes, waffles, being able to make your bread, making homemade pasta. Like, absolutely spectacular for that. Now, it's not limited to those, but those are some of the best ways that we have found our customers being able to take care of it. On top of that, why is it so important? It gives you the protein energy that you absolutely need. And if you're an active person, I'm a very active person. I play rugby, I like to work out. But if you're an active person, this one feeds back the muscles, feeds back your body exactly what you need, and in a great way to be able to start off your day. It's rich in fiber. It is absolutely nutrient dense. And of course, it has the level of protein that you really are wanting to need whenever you want to make sure that your body is feeding well. This is absolutely the breakfast food for anybody who is really trying to make sure that their kids or themselves really kick off correctly. And it's absolutely easy to make. All you need to do is put a little bit of baking flour to give it rise, and it has everything else that you need for it. 20 minutes and you'll be done and filled up and ready to go on with the rest of your day. You guys can absolutely go buy this on healthenhancedfoods.com and be able to go ahead and check out that buckwheat baking mix. Enjoy your food. Enjoy your breakfast. Let's go.
All right. We're back looking in with Jason Bray of Rugby Lovers Guide to Asia, expert of Super Rugby Pacific, National Rugby League, an overfan of the Broncos who, happened to have lost, not just now, but in the championships last year.
All right, yeah, move on. What did I tell you about that grand final loss? It's Voldemort. We don't speak of it. We don't speak of last year's grand final in the NRL. It is Voldemort. The game which shall not be named.
So, look, we're looking to try and see what's going to happen this week. So, obviously, I want to kind of go back off of what happened last week. Let's take away to Las Vegas. I talked a little bit about that last week. But the rest of the games for NRL, this is where obviously I am completely out of my wing on this one. You had Knights Raiders, Raiders winning 28-12. Warriors Sharks winning 16-12. Storm Panthers losing 8-0 to the Storm. Eels Bulldogs 26-8 win. You know, I always interested with Parramatta Eels. Yeah.
The Parramatta Eels. Just call them Eels.
There we go.
Just call them Eels.
Hey, look, you know, I take it for what it is. It's the name. It's just it catches the eye, catches the ear. You know, Dragons beat the Titans 28-4. Cowboys 43-18. Outside of what we saw from Vegas, what game actually stuck out the most to you? Yeah, in terms of their performance.
Well, I mean, there's quite a few games there. Lots of upsets in the first round. I wouldn't be surprised if there are tipsters out there who probably would have got 2 or 3 out of 8. There were a lot of upsets. I don't think anyone saw the Dragons. I picked the Dragons as the wooden spoons. I didn't think they were going to flog the Titans at home. The Panthers and Storm, that was always going to be a really tight game.
Right.
They've developed a real rivalry. The Storms, you know, they're right up there every year. They've been great now for 10 years. That's not a huge upset. I guess the big donut that the Panthers didn't even score was something of a surprise. Doggies have struggled, so the Eels beating them. I guess the 2 games, the one game that kind of shocked me was the Warriors Sharkies, right? So the Warriors are the New Zealand Warriors. They're doing really well on the field recent times, but definitely off the field. They're packing that stadium out over there in Auckland, getting big numbers, and they got a lot. Their fan base is really energized over the last couple of years. They're playing a wonderful brand of rugby, and in this game versus the Sharkies, who are again they're a top 8 playoff team continually, but not really pushing into the big one. Warriors were up 12. That 12 points they scored there came in the first 20 minutes, and they were just riding high on this big crowd. It looked like they were just going to steamroll the Sharkies. They had all the ball, all possession, and then the Sharkies won. And all they did was just grind. They just slowed the Warriors. They did it in slow motion. They just kind of snuck up on them, and before you know it, the Sharkies are up 16 points to 12. And the Warriors don't put any more points on. That was a real shock. The Sharkies are a good side. They've got one of the best players in the league in Nico Hines. So it's not a complete upset. But in the context of that game, it was like, it was like after 20 minutes, it's going to be the Warriors by how many? Then the Sharkies had them. So that was a bit of a shock.
I was gonna say, you know, from watching the Vegas one, you know, it really feels like, especially on the back end in the second half, whenever you really start to feel the wear down from probably the 3rd to 5th attempt for the try, especially in the second half of the game. That's whenever it's really the guts, the test of will, because that body breakdown of upper body hit over time really seems to be a breaker. And I know with the Sharks that they're one of the 3 million shark teams in rugby. You know, they tend to have the same kind of MO. We are good. We're bad until we're good. kind of moments.
Yeah. So they just they have some very good players in their team, but particularly Nico Hine, who's one of the best in the competition that they're playing. I think he was playing halfback. You do wear teams down. It is a brutal game. It's also a fast game. And so it becomes like you saw the Roosters game was quite different. Go back to Vegas, you saw the Roosters, they won the war of attrition in that game.
Right.
So the Bronx were in there. They were in there. It was only in the last 15 minutes that the Roosters finally pulled away. But you could see what was happening.
Right.
You could see that they were winning the battle in the trench. The Roosters were building the battle in the trenches, and they just arm wrestled that game away from the Broncos. Just the Broncos got more and more frustrated. The defense just kept turning up, and that's where they won. The Sharks just with their game and the Warriors, they just wrestled their way back into it, and they just kept the Warriors out. They kept them frustrated. And then they found ways of scoring. But they weren't great tries. but they just found ways of scoring points.
Efficiency.
Yeah,
Just consistency. It's the water drop rule. A drop of water can create a whole cave, if given time or something to that effect.
Yeah, you saw the if you saw the Seagulls Rabbitohs game, that was a different story where it looked like the Rabbitohs had it just over halftime. They scored one of their classic tries. They tend to go to their right. I think it's their right hand side and score tries. They strip the wings and they score down that side. It looked like this was to be a classic Rabbitohs win, and all of a sudden Manly just came in and just inundated with 3 or 4 tries in about 20 minutes, and just caught them completely out. They happen sometimes, but teams that tend to do the best in the NRL are the teams that can grind it out, and wear their opposition down. The Raiders also did that against Knights because that was another big upset. The Raiders, they're almost the classic get down and get dirty side. Now, I'm sure in the NFL, you know that one side that knows how to get down and dirty, niggly. Yeah, and Raiders are that team. They don't have big stars in the Raiders. The Raiders is the Canberra Raiders, which is the capital of Australia. It's one of the coldest parts of Australia, and because it's where our politicians live, it's the boringest part of Australia. So people don't want to play for the Raiders, right? People don't want to play for the Raiders because everything's closed at 8 o'clock at night.
God, dog.
Utah.
Australia,
and no one wants to go there. They can't keep players. They lost one of their best players, Jack Whiten, who went for lesser money to play for the Rabbitohs just because he was bored. Well, I don't know. He never said he was bored, but what happens is Ricky Stewart down there. He's one of these old school coaches. He's been there for he's been there forever now, 8 or 7 years. Mm-hmm. And what he does is he pulls all the people who are used to boring and cold, which is English people. And he pulls players across from England and like Elliot Whitehead and the new guy called Smithy, and they just play a really dogged, tough team game. And they pulled up a big win against the Knights, who are far bigger stars, Ponga and the like, and they beat them. If you can get down there and get into the dirty, and you can win your fair share of games. Of course, I think you need a bit more of that in there, but we saw a lot of that. I mean, I didn't see the Storm Panthers game, thank goodness. That looks I don't know if it was boring. It looks boring. But the Storm okay, this is my theory about rugby league, but also about rugby. You can win, and the teams that tend to win know how to win in different ways. If for whatever reason a game opens up and there's tries to be scored, your team knows how to play that game, right? So if the opposition gets a couple of intercept tries, even though they might not be great team, if they can pull off two or three quick tries, you're down 18-0, you still have the firepower to come back and win because you know how to score.
Right.
If a game is, if you're playing against a team like the Raiders or whoever, and they're getting down and dirty and gritty, well, you can win that game too. To me, that's the sign of any good side in almost any sport. You can win in different ways. The great teams can play ugly in the wet and the mud and win 3-0.
Right.
Or they can, if there's a try feast, whatever, the refereeing is different. It's a hard track, whatever reason, there's tons of they could win that game as well. I don't know what you think about that, but
I know. I think that makes sense. And honestly, though, but that should be, especially again, whenever you're working within a 5-down setup, you have to be able to get creative because, of course, you have to make up the most amount of space in the shortest amount of time. So if you're running a conventional 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, you're going to waste your time and you're just really killing out your energy with the hopes of being able to break over time. But obviously, if you're able to find ways to be able to bully that ball a little bit more and really be able to push, I guess that attack for territory, especially, that's whenever you're really going to be able to see the most difference. But again, varies from team to team. Some teams are better finesse. Some teams are better within the defense. So with that in mind, let's kind of look forward into week 2 of NRL. So, I think obviously, let's break down the game. We got Broncos, Rabbitohs, Sharks, Bulldogs, Panthers, Eels, Raiders, West Tigers, Cowboys, Knights, Storm, Warriors, Sea Eagles, Roosters, Dolphins, Dragons. Let's start with your first team that lost versus the other team that also lost in both the Rabbitohs and Broncos. This is going to be a home game for the Broncos, obviously coming back from Vegas. Both of them are coming back in. Tell me your thoughts with the Broncos at home against now an also very angry Rabbitohs team that played a very high-scoring game against the Sea Eagles.
I think, without being unbiased, Broncos by 100 points.
Absolutely not subjective. No feelings inside of that.
No, just playing it straight on that one, man. Straight down the line. No. The Broncos are playing at home. Both teams will come up fired. I have to admit, the Rabbitohs loss was probably, was more of a shock than the Broncos. The Roosters are a genuinely good side. So is the Sea Eagles, but the Rabbitohs, I thought they had that game in the bag, and the way they got blown away was quite shocking. They are full of really good players, and they should be contenders at the end of this year. But for whatever reason, they've started this slump about mid last year, and it doesn't look like they've shaken their way out of it. The Broncos, we're going to see whether they're going to suffer from their off-season losses. They lost a couple of really good players.
I was about to ask, who are the players that the Broncos lost from that championship losing, that second place team? Ultimately,
well, we lost Flegler, who's one of our big boys. In the forwards is where we lost that game. Okay. And Flegler usually comes in and does that hard man stuff with Haas up front, and then Carrigan gets in there as well. We lost Kate, so we lost Flegler and Herbie Farnworth, who's a great center. We lost them to the Dolphins, and then we lost Luke Capewell, which really shocked me. He's a real seasoned campaigner and a really solid performer, and he was good for the Warriors last week as well. We lost 3 players in key positions. Now, every team does, right? Mm-hmm. Every team loses players. We have a salary cap, and
free agency and whatnot.
Yeah, and Penrith have lost tons more players, I think, than we have. But how do you respond to that? How do you rearrange your team? It didn't look like Kevin Walters did a good job of getting the team together last week. It's particularly after we lost Pia Cura. One of our players got a HIA knock, and he was out for the game. He didn't rearrange that team very well. So if the Broncos get back into their winning groove, they should win at home.
Okay.
But we've still got to see what this 2024 Broncos look like with the change they made and how Kevy deals with those changes. Rabbitohs, of course, will be up there with a chance. Latrell Mitchell, Cook, Walker, Cameron Murray. They'll compete they could potentially win every game they play this season. They just need to put it together as well. I don't know why they're slumped, but they have slumped.
Okay, so all right, let's look at another game with the other side, Seagulls versus Roosters. It's funny that they have both those teams from Vegas basically playing their opposite side. This feels like the consolation prize versus championship rounds.
No idea what it's. We don't have a form guide. Second weekend, I have no idea what's going to happen with that Roosters Seagulls game. Both played very well. I think they shocked. Both teams are in a very similar situation, and when they've had, particularly the Roosters, but definitely also the Seagulls, where they've got really, really good players. The Roosters probably have a stronger squad than the Seagulls. But they haven't got all their players on the field fit and in form at the same time. Mm-hmm. So there's always been a couple of players out, a couple of players out here, a couple of players out of form. These guys over. What I would say about why they won their first round games in Vegas was both their teams had their players on the field in form and fit. And so now they're going to Brookvale, Seagulls home ground, which is again what we would call a bit of a fortress for them. It's not a ground that most teams like to travel to. Okay. But the Roosters, they'll turn up, and they were very professional. I've gone back to their professional best. If nothing else, the Roosters have always been a very professional outfit, along with the Storm. So I suspect Roosters. But
who are 2 players that we should be looking out for in that game that can be game breakers for either team's winning? Really, particularly as you believe the Roosters have the biggest chance of being able to win. Who do you think has the biggest game change for the Roosters in this situation?
What impressed me about Roosters, they played as a unit against the Broncos. Tedesco, of course, at the back. people keep writing off Tedesco. He's probably the second best fullback I've ever seen play the game. People, for whatever reason, particularly in New South Wales, like to write him off. He showed his class. If he's on fire, then that's a huge boost for the Roosters coming from the back there. And I guess you have to look at Keary. Luke Keary's good. For whatever, I like Victor Radley. He's one of these get down and dirty players. I noticed he had a very good game the other day, and if he plays well, Roosters play well. So there's 3 players for you: Keary, Radley, and Tedesco. Tedesco is kind of the heartbeat of that Roosters side. For the Eagles, that's an easy one. It's Tommy Turbo at the back, Travojevic. Again, the fullback versus fullback. Tommy's just a freak on his day. He had a season from heaven about 3 years ago where he was untouchable, like virtually untouchable. Then plagued by injuries. And of course, DCE, Daly Cherry Evans, a seasoned campaigner now, a winner, a great player. They're the players on both those sides.
Nice. Can you give me one game that you feel is going to be the surprise game of the week?
Ooh,
outside of obviously Broncos, Rabbitohs, and Sea Eagles.
They're all surprises. Again, there were so many upsets that first round. There's no form guide. There's no consistent form guide as yet.
Yo, give me the one that you will prioritize watching because you have the most expectations of entertainment.
Well, okay, the one that is on Friday night. The one that's the second. The ones on Friday night are usually really big. They're the ones that the television people and the NRL decided is going to be the big game. And it is the Western Derby between the Penrith Panthers versus the Parramatta Eels. It's called Parramatta Eels. If you want to remember, it doesn't matter Eels. All right. It doesn't matter Eels. But that's a Western Derby. So that will be a tough, that's always a tough, those teams fire up, those classic, derbies right. Between two teams that are geographically close to each other. That will be a really interesting one. The Eels thumped the Doggies last week, and the Panthers lost. So Panthers would usually go in. I think they'll be short price favourites. But the Eels turn up against the Panthers for the last couple of seasons. They've turned up against Panthers, and even at home, they've given them a couple of beatings. So that's the game that will have all the eyes on it.
Last year the Eels weren't really that great, and I feel like maybe the last couple of years they've been kind of floundering. What seems like different this year that they seem to be more competitive? What happened during the off season?
They do have a good squad. Mm-hmm. They've got players like Mitchell Moses and Gutherson and Co, who are good players. Last year they went hot and cold. Last 2 years, they've just been running hot and cold. Mm-hmm. And particularly when Mitchell Moses turns up to play, and Dylan, the number 6, when he turns up to play, they've got every chance to win. They've got some great forwards, Campbell Gillard and all them. So they can run hot and cold. That's how they've been. That's the form guide from them. Remember, they made it to the grand final 2 years ago, and they got thumped by Penrith. The kind of thing that Eels fans don't forget. They are one of the biggest supporting clubs in Sydney. They play under a lot of pressure for that reason. The Parramatta district, that's a district in Western Sydney, has a lot of people living in there. So they play under a fair bit of pressure, and they run hot and cold. But they've got off to a good start. They thumped Bryce Cartwright, got a huge amount of points for the fantasy. If they play like they did last week, they've got every chance of being Penrith. Whatever you say about the Eels week in, week out form, they get up for the Panthers.
Yep. Awesome. Jason, man, I want to thank you so much for, breaking it down for us. Thank you for the information. I mean, look, even if you don't know what the name of your company is on every given day basis, I appreciate the expertise on this with the NRL and Super Rugby, and I expect to be able to do this again for the weeks to come as we get through this season, which is a lot of season.
It's a massive season, and that's why it's early days for both competitions, particularly for the NRL. Go the Broncos. Go the Bronx. Go the Reds. Go the Reds.
Yo, you guys can absolutely check out Jason. He just dropped a great Bangkok Sevens tournament Bangkok 10s tournament video. I talked about it last week. You guys can check it on his channel, Jason Bray on YouTube, or Jason Bray Films if you want to be specific, or Jason Bray on Instagram as well. He actually started using Instagram again, like a modern person. You know, he's not.
You young people with your little gadgets and gadgets and grams and TikToks.
Oh, thank you so much, Jason, man. And
all right, no worries, mate.
Look forward to having you.
All right, I don't want to hold you guys off. I know it's another ad. Watch out now. But I need to tell you guys about Rugby Outlet Mall. Look, this is the official e-commerce store for Rugby Swag Show and for Gift Time Rugby Network. And of course, we want to make sure that we are hooking you up with gear that is absolutely built for you to be able to wear on a day-to-day. Of course, we can do jerseys, and everybody has a jersey, but not everybody wears a jersey every day. But we have the rugby gear for you. Whether it is our FedEx best or our PayPal best, we have unique designs that are going to be fun and desirable for you to represent the way that you need to. And of course, if you guys go to rugbyoutletmall.com and use the code Grow Rugby, we're going to save you 10% off your first order. Hey, please support Rugby Swag Show. And of course, even some of our other stuff, the HBC Rugby Classic, and just general gear and merch for you guys, because hey, I want you guys to have the best, and I definitely appreciate you guys supporting. So definitely go rugbyoutletmall.com, use promo code GROWRUGBY, GREAUX Rugby, and you will get 10% off your first order. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys, and let me let you get back. Cheers.
Man, welcome back, you guys. All right, man. One big thank you to Jason for, again, NRL and Super Rugby information. We got a couple more stories left, but I'm going to go through a couple of these really quickly. Well, number one, if you guys did not know, Urban Rugby Championships happened this past weekend. I want to give it out in DC. Shout out to Marcus Woods and Washington Youth Rugby for hosting it. Big shout out to the winners of it. It was Chicago and Memphis, Chicago boys and Memphis Inner City Rugby girls to take the championship overall from them. Biggest congratulations to them on their endeavors and their work. Always want to be able to support those who are funneling and can be added into the HBCU rugby element, and simply just because very dope programs in and of itself for them. Secondly, guys, we got the World Rugby HSBC Sevens Challenger Series also happened this weekend. Coming out of it, big surprises, but not really if you pay attention. Out of the men's side of it, Uruguay ended up taking the win. And for the women's side, China took the win for that. Still two more left. We're going to talk a little bit more about it next week, but we got a little bit bigger story to be able to talk about going into this one. This will be our final segment. And I want to talk about the Africa Games, man, that are going to be taking place in Accra, Ghana. They're actually started already, but what makes this important is that this year they are bringing rugby for the first time. And as a result, my personal interest went up when I found out that the Nigerian women's rugby team will be making their debut at the African Games this year. And, you know, when you have all that and you know you got the interest, the expertise, but you don't have all the knowledge that goes along with it, you bring somebody else in, and we got a chance to talk to the legend, former New York rugby GM, man is the coach of coaches, coach from Jamaica to Brazil to Nigeria and more. This man has been doing it forever. We got Steve Lewis, who's going to be explaining and breaking down what's been going on with the rugby championship. So with the Africa Games, and what is going on with Nigeria rugby as he takes them into what can be potentially a gold medaling situation for this debut team. So I hope you guys take it in. Let me introduce to you Steve Lewis. Man, you know I'm always here about Nigeria, and I've talked about this multiple times, and so we're here obviously with the man, the myth, the legend. All right, look, recognize him for Nigeria rugby, but also has his company Elevate Rugby, about to change the coaching world for universities here in the U.S., for coaching in general in the U.S., but also man, this is a guy that's been into depth. I remember the first time that we met, the man made fun of me. He said, "Oh, your video, you were looking ugly in your video."
I've actually got some good photographic evidence of you in Little Rock, Arkansas. So we can talk about that if you want.
Yo, I love it. I love it. Yo, Steve Lewis, man. Steve, thanks so much for coming through.
Sure. Happy to be here. It's a pleasure to be in the presence of greatness, you know?
I am feeling the honor. I'm feeling the honor of the greatness of being around you. So, and obviously, look, a lot of people don't know. I add this little tidbit before we get started. Steve's mom is a direct reason that my wife is my wife now. If it was not for her, we would not have gone through the program, au pair program, that would have led her to Baton Rouge, where I would have met her, and all of a sudden now in Brazil and married with twins on the way. So thank your mom.
We're family. We're family, you and I.
Through and through. I love it. I love it, man. Steve, man.
She's a big fan of yours. So she watches the rugby odds with she likes you, she likes JBL, not so McCarthy, not so much.
I mean, look, we struggle to try and love Matt. We try and struggle, but he wants to make it difficult for no reason.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So obviously, the big thing that we wanted to talk about coming up next week is Africa Games, which I don't feel like a lot of people know, and I only was recently getting to know more about it. But with the Africa Games, we finally have rugby being a major participant in rugby sevens. And this year, Nigeria, since they finally have their accreditation or whatever back and allowed to put together a team, were finally able to send a team. Fortunately, they were able to send a women's team. Unfortunately, not able to send the men's team. Yo, Steve, look, what do we have going on with this, man? Because every time I get like a little bit of a high, like something bureaucratic just takes it away from me a little bit with Nigeria's side. So as the head coach for the seventh side and what you guys did with the Olympic side, with the Olympic qualifiers, what's going on with Nigeria and Nigerian men for the Africa Games?
Okay, so the Africa Games is every 4 years. It's like the Pan Am Games, right? So it's Olympic, essentially rules and Olympic committees run it. And each sort of continent has a similar type of thing. So this is the first time that rugby has been accepted as a sport in the Africa Games. So that's why it's kind of unique. It's not Olympic qualification because that's kind of already done for Paris. Right. So we are essentially an exhibition sport. And the games have already started and they're in Accra, Ghana this year. So we have rugby in it, which is fantastic. As you alluded to, initially we had two teams, men and women going. But in a classic example of Nigerian, shall we say, bureaucratic incidents, they asked us to pull a team. They said, we don't have enough money. You need to pull one of the teams. So we had some success last year. Nigeria's just come back from a World Rugby ban, right? And so last year the men did very well. Qualified Mauritius, went to the Africa qualifier, played the Blitzbokke, played Kenya, had a great time. So the women haven't played, and we felt, the board and myself felt that we should allow the women the opportunity to get on the field. So this will be the first time Nigeria women have ever played as Nigeria women. So it's historic. It's been a challenge. I could give you multiple stories on the Africa wins again variant, but the key thing is most of the girls are there in Accra. I get there on Friday and we start playing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week. So it's beyond exciting and it's beyond historic for Nigerian women to get out on the field and play rugby.
Man, and I think this is one of those, like you said, this is a historic moment. And I add, especially considering that this is an area that has one of the youngest populations on the continent. In terms of total general under 30, highest populations under 30. It's an area that obviously is very cultural significant to Western Africa and the rest of the continent. So the ability to be able to develop rugby from both the women's and the men's side is very, very high ceiling, in my opinion. Would you agree? Disagree?
For a lot of people don't understand, Nigeria is the biggest economy in Africa and the biggest population. So I think 1 in 6 Africans are Nigerian.
Recognize us.
In addition to that, the athletic DNA and the potential is there. Physically, they're one of the bigger nations, and so I always thought an interesting statistic was at the last Olympics, 57 Nigerians were in the Olympics representing other countries.
Yeah.
So what that's showing you is there's plenty of talent, and the talent is not actually being nurtured domestically in Nigeria. So with the rugby is interesting because, and we can get to this further, the team is composed of both domestic girls and girls from the diaspora, Canada, US, UK. And as with the men, you have that balance. Two things are important. It's important to be successful on the field representing Nigeria, but it's also important that the game domestically in the country actually blossoms. It's not a bunch of expats running around playing in tournaments, or it shouldn't be. We need to perform creditably, but we also need to have that aspirational piece whereby the game can actually grow.
Right. I know particularly whenever you guys were returning, when we were returning back with the Olympic team this year, and a lot of players, and I have a lot of people who contact me from Nigeria, as well as some of the groups who always ask, all right, how many of the domestic players are able to play this time? How are we getting more domestic players in? And again, for the sake of context, a lot of people don't know there is a legitimate league that goes. A lot of it spread around Lagos, for the most part, going up to northern Nigeria, Abuja, Kabata area, and then a little bit of central, southeast Nigeria, though I know my Port Harcourt area doesn't get as much.
Want me to test you on your Nigerian geography?
Oh, Lord.
Your point is well made. So most of the rugby in Nigeria, for obvious reasons, population is Lagos.
Right.
There is a stronghold in Kano.
That was the other one. Yes.
Yeah, so Martin Crawford up there, he got 2,000 kids playing rugby every weekend.
Really?
So Lagos and Kano are the two strongholds of rugby within Nigeria. There's some in Abuja as well. Interestingly, the girls, it's Edo State, which is down towards Port Harcourt. But so I think 7 of the girls are from Edo. And interestingly, so with the women, it's more domestic and less expat or diaspora. Yeah. With the men at the moment, it's more diaspora and less domestic. You don't want to get into quotas or anything like that, but you want to pick the best 12 players. But you have to be conscious of the two things: performance and growing the game.
I do want to ask, before we go into a little bit more detail on the women's side and what we ended up finding from the final squad, was in the determination, and you just spoke on it, on finding the best 12 players. Was there any pushback or any kind of conflict when it came to location? Obviously, like with presidential election, we have our regional setups on everything where it's like president needs to come from this part, and if they're not from here, then you yada yada yada. Everybody gets into a little bit of a halu, bahui and whatnot.
Wahala.
Wahala.
Plenty wahala in selection, let me tell you.
So what did you guys find that? Did you guys have that same issue, or because of the fact that the sport, especially with the women's side, is so niched, you were able to really just particularly take the best available players, plus the few that have been playing over in the UK and Canada for sevens tournaments like Las Vegas or LA Sevens and whatnot?
Yeah, so you're right. With the women, Edo State in particular has put a lot of money into sport. And for whatever reason, they put a lot of money into women's rugby, and those girls played rugby league for Nigeria about 2 months ago. So that's why there's a preponderance of Edo State girls in this. Now with the men, it's Barewa, which is a Kano club. They're probably the best, and then there's Cowrie and Lagos. There's good players in both centers, and there's definitely some politics. You will know, but perhaps viewers might not. Yeah, Nigeria is a massive country, multiple tribes. Yep. So, for instance, when you're putting a team together, you potentially have Yoruba or Igbo, English-speaking Christian guys. Mm-hmm. You have Arabic-speaking Muslim Fulanis and Hausa in the north. Mm-hmm. And then you have, there's no other way to say it, posh boys from the UK. So you're trying to marry all these 3 types of people who don't necessarily like each other off the bat. Right. You've got to try and convince them that here it is here. This is what they're all playing for, right? Nigeria. With the women, I don't anticipate it being women in that regard are much easier to deal with. So when I get there on Friday, we've got 9 domestic and 6 diaspora, but the majority of the domestic, I think 7 are from Edo. So I anticipate it being a little easier getting the cohesion. And this, I'm talking more off the pitch as well, right? They've got to trust each other, like each other,
right?
Go to battle with each other. Yeah.
No, and that one I think becomes which is what will be very, very interesting to make do, because again, for the sake of the viewers, we all have it. When we're talking about multiple cultures, we're talking about 500 different language groups that just exist in Nigeria alone, let alone the major ones. So for me, I'm McMay, very small group that's inside southeast Nigeria. I'm closer to Igbo, but not Igbo because we're not Igbo, but closer to that in that regard. But those past elements and that conversion of people in one area does create its own cultural conflicts in some way, shape, or form. So,
and then they're coached by the biggest minority, right? Scottish Nigerians. Scottish Nigerians. There's only about 3 of us.
Between your Jamaican, your undisputed Jamaican citizenship, now the Nigerian one, man, you're reversing it. What we do, all right? The Nigerians and Jamaicans go everywhere. Not the Scottish going over there.
Hey, I've got the DNA test. 3% West African.
Let's go. Let's go. I love it. I love it. So, okay, so let's get moving. Let's forward in on the women, the Nigerian rugby women's team. Yep. And the article had based that you guys had finalized the list of players. I'm going to list them off here, and then let's talk about who can watch and what your opinions to do. We have from the foreign players list, we have Fidelia Omagan, Gloria Azudua, Ada Okonkwo, that's from Canada. Ashelia Gada from the UK. Rosalind Okbara is from the US. And then the home base ones are Iora Success, Becky Okichipi. Let me know if I'm getting these. Correct me whenever you do it. Perpetua Manma and Blessing Umuji. For these teams coming out of Delta, Edo, and then Delta and Edo State RFCs. When you guys were selecting these teams, what was the parameters that you guys utilized to be able to determine the best girls, and how many did you guys have to select from?
Yeah, so on the domestic side, that's really been run by Martin Crawford and by Aziz Ladipo, who is the secretary, or essentially the manager of Nigerian rugby. So they had a camp in Abuja. They did all the things you would normally do, bronco tests, and that group was reduced from an extended squad down to about 15. And we ended up with 9 of them. I think you missed one, Precious Felix, South Africa-based girl.
Yeah.
So she's there. And then essentially on the diaspora side, Fidelia Omegon is the godmother is not necessarily the way to put it, but she's going to be co-captain. So I've relied heavily on her. I've watched a fair bit of film. A couple of the girls played PR7s. So there's enough film on them. Mm-hmm. But to be honest, this is a bit of a challenge from a coaching perspective because I've never coached any of the 15. So I get there and we got 3 days. I mean, obviously I've given them the material. Right. They've been working in camp, but I have not seen them.
Right.
So my work's going to be, I've got my work cut out for me to understand who's who and what our best combinations are. But the process, I mean, that's the nature of the process when you're dealing with players from multiple locations.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's always going to end up being some level of a trust test. And I feel like at least within the culture of rugby, at least we know, even if it's not the most efficient way, at least there is a normality to, in a very short period of time, mesh everybody together to be able to play the best version of a high-level game. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit more bared down. I doubt you'll use as much of a complex passing system, but obviously one that's enough to be able to utilize the skills off of a day or two of practice training, right?
Yeah, I mean, unless you're a professional environment and like, some of the top tier 1 sevens teams, right? Most people, you're coming together and you get a week beforehand,
right?
Even in the Challenger Series and invitational sides. So the skill, the clever piece is, as you say, not dumbing it down, but stripping it back and making a relatively minimalist game plan, right? You concentrate on some basic things. And then as you spend more time together, you can add things in and layer things in. But you're absolutely right. It's about simplifying it, getting everyone on the same page, everyone using the same language, everyone trusting each other, and then give it a go.
Man, I love that. I love that. All right. So I want to go into the competition because this is the part that really has me the most interested. I've talked a lot about how people need to keep watching, especially when it came to the Gold Cup, watching the countries that seem like you have not, that are underestimated the most. Uganda being my personal dark horse in a lot of competitions. They have, I don't know where they came from, but the level of play that they've been able to do within the Africa Cup, even a little bit in the Challengers Cup, has been tremendous for a country that, one, is not thought of to be a rugby country. Number two, obviously is very economically stripped compared to maybe Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, even Ghana, but yet seems to have a very powerful base. You have a lot of you experience them with the men's side in the Olympics, with the Olympic qualifiers. And then obviously with the women, can you kind of give me a rundown of what people can expect, or maybe give me some confirmation or disconfirmation on what to expect from that Uganda side?
Yeah, I would have them. South Africa is the most organized rugby country in the continent, but then right behind it you've got Kenya, and as you say, you've had Uganda moving up fast. They've actually overtaken Zimbabwe and Namibia, which were both traditional sort of powerhouses. The reason for the success is Uganda, it's all about having a robust domestic league, right? So they're organized, and their women and their men are playing sevens regularly at home. And so when they then get the opportunity, as both Uganda and Kenya, men and women, have both been in the Challenger Series, so they're going to come in hot because they're organized, they've been playing together, that they are buttoned down gold and silver, right? South Africa, to my understanding, are not coming. So those two are your favorites. Underneath that, it is a crapshoot. We are playing, I have my fingers in most places. I have intelligence and data coming in. I don't know what's going on in Burundi or the Democratic Republic of Congo, right? Madagascar, I got some contacts, and they play a lot of rugby. But Burkina Faso, nothing. So it's really going to be very interesting. So you get out there, you kind of try and watch them at practice. You try and watch every game, and get a sense. But it really is, with the exception of Kenya and Uganda, where there is plenty of film. As a coach, I'm sort of going in blind.
As someone who has been, like you just said, has your hands in a lot of rugby, especially coming out of the tier 2 and developing that up, which I think is probably one of the most commendable things that you do, to be able to provide that high level for areas that are not particularly rugby heavy, but have potential high levels of potential rugby talent. When you look at a competition like this one for the first time being in the African Games, how much do you think that actually plays into the development of not just rugby in Africa itself, but how it plays into the world scale of it, whether it's the Caribbean or whether it's Asia, South America, these areas that have the highest population but get the least amount of attention? How significant is something like this for that growth?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's another tournament, and remember, this one isn't organized by World Rugby. This is Olympic committees. Now, I personally believe World Rugby just pays lip service to growing the game, right? In terms of, the Six Nations run it, the Super Rugby countries, those countries run it. You look at the World Rugby Council. So while they talk a big game, we're growing the game, we want to do this, we want to do that. This is the first year with an expanded Challenger Series, like 12 teams, second tier, 3 tournaments, that they've actually put their money where their mouth is. But let's be realistic. They don't really fund Rugby Africa. They're not giving, Herbert Mensah, who's the Ghanaian president of Rugby Africa, is pretty much there with his begging bowl at every World Rugby meeting. So this sporting colonialism, don't get me going on politics here.
Let's go.
But sporting colonialism is alive and well, right?
Right.
And so they talk about the Caribbean. You look at the athletes, talk about Africa, the athletes. All right, let's put some money into it. Let's see these athletes get the opportunity, and then you'll see results. You see just shoots of growth, Uganda, Kenya. South Africa's different, right?
Right.
But there's so much untapped athletic potential. And I don't feel it's well enough resourced by World Rugby.
You know, I know particularly whenever we talk about something like Augustin Prichot spoke really heavily about, you know, why is there not more investment in places like Brazil, in places like the Caribbean, in places like Nigeria, where once again, as you spoke of, a heavy amount of athletic talent. But again, you also get to see, I loved what you did with Jamaica over the last couple of years, where they started finding themselves in Hong Kong series more and more and being a consistent, at least a competition, and maybe not contender for a medal, but they were in, people had to pay attention to what they were doing. I remember a game against Germany, strong finish by Jamaica on that one. I think it was a loss, but you start to see the push there. From what you see with like in what you'll obviously experience, but what you see with the teams in Africa now, do you see that maybe even the home bases themselves are starting to put more investment into rugby because there's a potential there, or is it still very skeleton and, you know, we're really still pooling for any kind of recognition to be able to elevate?
Yeah, I mean, I think with regard to Nigeria, you know, the total amount of budgeted money does not go to the sport, right? And it does not go to the athlete. It doesn't go to the competition, which is a shame.
Right.
And I think those countries that are, you know, you see Uganda and Kenya going well, they still have issues. I'm talking sort of financial, you know, governance, shall we say. Right. So that's the frustration, because the athletes are there. It's the chicken and the egg, right? So you need success on the field to excite the press or excite sponsors, right? So if you get a winning team, they have a couple of good tournaments, it's easy to get sponsors, and then you get more money, and it's easy to keep going. But it's hard to have that initial success. You kind of have to have this fantastic tournament out of the blue and get real, like hopefully with Nigeria women. If we get a bronze medal, boom, we're alive and well and going. Right. So chicken and egg. You need the support, financial support, sponsorship, funding, and resources and facilities to get the results. But sometimes you can't get that until you get a couple of freak results, you know.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. And again, you know, it's a common problem that we see from a global rugby standpoint. But again, you know, the uniqueness of this sport in terms of the perception in these areas obviously adds another level of pressure that goes along with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to finish that point. So, for instance, last year, Nigerian men out of rugby 3 years, haven't played a game. So we go to Mauritius, which was the pre-Olympic qualifier, right? And the top three went up. So we finished second, lost the final to Algeria. So we go up to Zimbabwe, we play with the big boys. So, and we lost to the Blitzbokke 29-0. Right. We lost to Kenya 32-10. Right. That's pretty damn good.
Right. Those being the top two in the end, the finalists.
Yeah, so we went from 34th to 8th last year. Man. So if Nigerian men's rugby is at all funded and gets 4 competitions, hopefully 5 or 6, they're not going to be 1 or 2, but we could get to 4 or 5 pretty quickly in a year, 2 years. With the women, I feel the opportunity is even bigger because South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and then what is there? We can go far fast. And that's the exciting thing about African women's rugby. The opportunity is there.
I love it. I got one more question for you before I let you go. Look, I need to ask this because what happened with the Morocco game? What is in Morocco? Because that is not a team that I expected whenever in Mauritius. Was it Mauritius or was it a qualifier right before? You guys were it was such a tough game. Obviously, Morocco ended up winning that tournament. But I wanted to know, like, what I didn't expect Morocco to be in it. Like, it's not a country that I expected to have a powerful rugby team. And once again, Kenya, South Africa for sure, Namibia, Zimbabwe for sure. What was it that you see with Morocco, or that you know with Morocco, that allowed them to have all of a sudden like this super team? And then I just haven't heard nothing from them since then.
Okay, so it was Algeria.
I'm sorry, that's it. Northern Africa is where I had in my mind.
Right next to it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you why. 5 French second division players. So think about that. Think about while Nigeria has, say, UK and US diaspora, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, that being former French colonies, have a lot of French connections. So all their good players go over there. They're not playing top league in France, but they're playing Pro de Deux, they're playing Federal 3. So they had 5 guys who were semi-pro players. So it wasn't, 12 Algerians.
Right.
It was, and Nigeria was, 5 UK guys, same thing. So that's why they were strong, because they had legitimate players.
I see. Okay. It was just something that I was wondering, because again, every time there's always seems to be a surprise of who ends up being like top level. And I'm like, where did you come from? Why have I not seen you on any of the other competitions since then, or on the map?
But this is the beauty of sevens, right? So in 15s, the best team wins 80 to 90% of the time.
Right.
In sevens, that percentage drops. You've got the chance for an upset. One mistake, missed tackle or a yellow card or a referee decision, and a game can swing in sevens. You get more upsets. That's why it's more exciting. And you get more underdogs coming through, which is why it's more exciting.
Man, I love it. Yeah. Steve, man, I truly appreciate you taking the time to talk about this. Like I said, I always tell people, like, I want to be able to bring more of these competitions up to the front, especially when it comes to the continent and especially when it comes to Nigeria. The more that I can be able to push them up, personally, there's always going to be that end. Before we go, I just want to see if you could talk a little bit about Elevate Rugby. And what it is that you are fully doing. I obviously briefed it a little bit, but why take it from the third party when we go direct?
Exactly. So Elevate Rugby, right? It's my new venture. It's essentially coaching consultancy. So I believe that particularly with regard to coaching sevens, and also with regard to coach education, coach mentoring, there isn't a lot of coach education in the US. USA Rugby does a piss poor job of it. So there's a gap there, and perhaps I can fill it. With the sevens, I've got a reasonable record, and there's a lot of demand to come in and do 2-3 day camps. And, I'm a gun for hire, so hire me.
How can people get in contact with you?
Yep. www.elevate-rugby.com. Elevate your coaching, elevate your sevens, elevate your rugby.
Let's go. I love the tagline. Guys, check it out. www.elevate-rugby.com. Steve, thank you so much. Good luck out in Puerto Rico with Babson. I hope you guys absolutely smash this weekend. And obviously, just safe trips overall.
Great. Appreciate it, man. Good to see you again.
Before I let you guys get back to it, I want you guys to go check out rugbyoutletmall.com. This is the place where we are bringing in casual rugby wear. We're trying to set up the design.
I'm going to let you get back to the show. I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. But in 2024, it is necessary that you have your own website. Don't let anybody tell you social media is the only place that you can be able to advertise. You need your own home. And the best home to be able to purchase online is through Green Geeks. This is the web host platform that gives you the most for the cheapest price, y'all. I've been using Green Geeks for almost 10 years now, and off the WordPress platform, I've been able to customize and create websites to my desire and to the liking that I need. Included with it, they give you some of the best customer service in the business, and I cannot say enough about them. They have been able to be a great assistance to everything I do. And if you guys want to be able to start today at $4.95 per month, go to the link in the bio or the link in the caption, depending on where you're at, and go use it to help the show and get your site up right away. There's no reason that you need to be having complications, that you need to be paying thousands of dollars to be able to do it, or even thousands of dollars per month to be able to get your website up. Go to Green Geeks, check it out, support the show. All right, let's get you back.
All right, welcome back, y'all. Hey, man, I want to say this was one heck of a show today. Man, I want to thank you all for taking the time to be able to pay attention, to listen. Big thanks out to Jason Bray, the Rugby Lover's Guide to Asia, and Steve Lewis of Elevate Rugby, Nigeria Rugby. Thank you so much for all the info. Thank you guys so much for the time. For everybody else, I hope that you guys get a chance to check out some of our other episodes. Of course, check out our interviews. We just released a great interview with the Corey Jones, freelance professional rugby player. Did one, DeMonte Noble prior to that, Wendy Young, Mike Anderson, just a slew of people, Nia Tapper, Blaine Scully, Shetta Emba. Man, there's just a list of people that go on, Tozon to Stanway, man, and just take it. Lance Kavanaugh, we'll just go on. I could just keep going on. Guys, definitely go check it out. Of course, y'all, I hope that you guys are able to take the rest of this week and really, really get the most out of it, because I hope that you are happy. I hope that you are truly healthy. And of course, I hope that you know that you are so highly favored. Until next time, y'all. Thank you. Cheers.